Welcome to Casual Politics, Tristram Hunt. Thank you very much for accepting my request, and I'm very grateful to you.
Sure.
First, please allow me to congratulate you for your re-election as Member of Parliament. And ask you that, how disappointing was it to come back as Member of Parliament and still your party is not in government?
Well, obviously it's a great privilege to be elected a Member of Parliament, and that's always a privilege to represent Stoke-on-Trent, and to be returned with a good majority is a great thing. But obviously it's a huge disappointment that we're not, as a Labour Party, in government, and so you do return to this place with a not such a spring in one step as would have hoped. It would have been good to be going into government and doing things rather than critiquing and criticising and opposing.
And do you think that what was the problem that you didn't reach out to voters, especially in the South and Scotland?
Well, we face two different problems. In Scotland, we face the challenge of nationalism with the SNP and the loss of traditional Labour voters and traditionally those affiliated to the Labour Party, and that's a big seismic change. And in the south of England, we didn't appeal in places like Harlow and Stevenage and Southampton and Swindon to aspirational, home-owning, Middle England communities who didn't feel that Labour Party was on their side, and that's why we didn't win those seats.
And even for that, you had good candidates, such as Rowena Davies for Southampton and others as well.
We had great candidates, Susie Stride and Harlow and Anne Snellgrove in Swindon and Rowena Davis in Southampton, and they did everything they could, and the work was hard, but we didn't manage to carry the country. People didn't feel safe with the Labour Party when it came either to the public finances or how that would impact on their family finances.
And in Scotland, they were saying that Labour Party was too right-wing, and in England, they were saying that Labour Party was too left-wing. So, which side are you on, Tristram Hunt?
Well, this is the political challenge
Yes.
We face, and there's a debate, as it were, in Scotland whether this was a question of austerity or whether this was a question of nationalism. We have to be Labour. And so we have to be sound on the public finances, but we need to be progressive on interventions in education and health, in the environment. So we shouldn't fall into the left-right trap, because we'll never win on that. We are progressive, centre-left party that is concerned with ensuring that people can get on with their lives and improve their lot. But we also, crucially, want to devolve lots of power out of here in Westminster and Whitehall.
And one of Ed Miliband's greatest mistakes, some people, they claim that it was to distance himself from centre-left ground, was to ditch New Labour and Blair and Brown years. Do you agree with them?
Well, I think you should always reinvent the Labour Party, and the prescriptions of 1997 weren't necessarily prescriptions for 2015. But we also know that people trusted the Labour Party in 97, 01, 05 because we were sound on the economy as well as progressive on issues such as education and health. But I think Ed's achievement was also, I think as Tony Blair's acknowledged, to make sure that we address the issue of inequality and the rising nature of inequality in our society. But clearly, if we're not winning on the economy, we're not going to win the election.
And don't you think that it's unfair now that Labour Party lost the election, that all the shadow cabinet and all the members of Labour Party now, they all ditching Ed Miliband's policy? Especially mansion tax, EU referendum, and yourself yesterday in a very interesting article on The Guardian, you said that he was unclear on schools policy. Don't you think that it's unfair now?
No, I think everything should be open to discussion. We suffered a terrible election loss. We've got to put everything on the table, have a root and branch review, find out what went right and what went wrong. And this is the moment now to ask the tough questions on the mansion tax, on education policy, on all of these areas, because we're in opposition. If we don't ask them now, we're not going to be ready to try and go back into government in a few years' time.
And have you chosen your candidate? Is it Liz Kendall? And because there was a U-turn on your side about free schools, and she supports it. So she supports free schools.
No, Liz supports the Labour Party policy, which is that those free schools which are in existence, of course, would exist under the Labour Party, and we support all good schools, whatever form they are. But what she doesn't think, as far as I understand, is that we should have a policy where we're opening up schools in areas where they're not needed, whilst existing schools are having a 10% cut to their budgets. And I think she's quite right on that. But I think Liz is a good candidate. She's asking the difficult questions of the party. She's going to be challenging to us. She's taking us out of our comfort zone. She's a strong pro-European. She's strong pro-business. She believes in early years education and tackling disadvantage at root. So she's a good Labour politician.
And some people, they made some parallels between 1992 general election, that it was too close to call. So and that time they said that it was because of shy Tories. But this time, what was the problem? Chris?
Well, the problem in I think in the final week, 10 days, was that the Conservative message about Ed Miliband and the SNP began to frighten an awful lot of voters in southern England and in the southwest, and that certainly gave them a lot of Liberal Democrat seats they weren't expecting to win. But there was the broader point about the Labour Party just not being trusted enough on the economy, and if you're behind on the economy and you're behind on leadership, then it's very difficult to get the kind of majority you need. Even though all the polls were saying we were neck and neck, and we did actually increase our vote slightly, but nowhere near enough.
And what about the trade unions? Are they still too influential, as now they're backing Andy Burnham, as they did for Ed Miliband? He was not the right leader, but they chose him, and now do you think that they're choosing the wrong candidate?
No, because again, one of Ed's achievements was reforming the system by which he himself was elected. In the 2010 elections, actually the trade unions played a much bigger role, sending out sort of supportive messages and all the rest of it. And it's much diminished now. One member, one vote. In the old days, you could have multiple votes. So the trade unions are part of the Labour movement, and they are an important part of that. But the Labour Party has to be a democratic organisation.
But still, they're recruiting more members every day by paying them. Do you think that that's the right thing to do?
I don't know about that. If you can't have your membership of the Labour Party paid for you by somebody else. We're seeing more and more people sign up to be members of the Labour Party,
but not forced by the trade unions, in your opinion.
No, I'd need to see evidence of that. It's great more and more people are joining, but I want people to be joining for the right reasons.
And now about the EU referendum, do you think that Labour Party should run its own campaign? Because if they win, you win the campaign, then it would become a springboard for success in the general election. As Tories, they will be split by that time.
Well, I think we should support the Yes campaign. I think we should be supportive of that. There will also be an independent Labour Party campaign, but I think let's see what the form of the Yes campaign is. But my strong intimation is that we in the Labour Party should be supporting a Yes campaign.
So do you want to join a wider cross-party campaign?
Yes, I think we should support a wide cross-party campaign to make the case of being in Europe.
and how the Labour Party could reinvent its social democratic message to speak to people's inspiration, in your opinion?
That has to be about rhetoric and tone and language. It has to be about supporting wealth creators and being on the side of business. It has to be about willing to make the tough decisions about the deficit and the debt. It means, being very strong about home ownership and some of the material aspirations. So we need all of that language to come back. And the problem that we faced previously was that individual policies in and of themselves, like the mansion tax, 50p, all the rest of it, the cumulative effects of that seem to suggest that we were against people getting on, and we paid the price of that electorate.
And now that you lost the election, some of your colleagues, they supporting actually Tories' policies. Do you think, is that fair to your party?
Well, I don't know what policies you refer to.
EU referendum, you were against it, and now you're in favour of it.
Yes, I think the public, that was part of the Tory manifesto, as a leading part of the Conservative manifesto. The British people have made a decision there. I think the Labour Party has to accept that decision and then make the case for a yes vote. I think there are still some of the reservations that we held out there about the nature of the vote and the impact on business, but I think we're a democracy, the British people have spoken, we take heed of that.
Yes. And why then that your party hasn't come up with a stronger policy to challenge George Osborne's Northern Powerhouse?
Well, when you look at the election, what Manchester did was return Labour MPs, and what Manchester did was return Labour councillors. So the politics in Manchester are Labour politics, and it's Labour politicians who are delivering this devolution, and that's as it should be. But we have to be much stronger about devolving powers, and actually our programme was very pro-devolution. For example, in education, I think it's crazy that Manchester shouldn't have the ability now to commission new schools to try and raise standards at a combined authority level. So we're willing to go much further.
And last question, I know that you're in a rush, that do you think that if Britain decides to leave the European Union, would it produce a clamour over another independence in Scotland?
I think we'd have to see the nature of the vote, but certainly I think if Scotland voted to stay in Europe and England voted to leave Europe and maybe Wales as well, I think that would put the Union under a great deal of pressure.
We shall wait and see.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.